Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Create Yourself Imagery, Intimacy, Innovation, a place where people from all walks of life and various backgrounds come to share their transformative personal and professional stories of restoration, confidence, clarity, and empowerment. They're here to share their helpful tools, resources, and affirming guidance. I'm Joyce Kiles, your global speaker, author, trainer, and coach. And if you're ready to transition, transform, and thrive, this is the podcast for you. I am so excited about our guest today. We recently met, maybe a couple of months ago, through a mutual friend, and just immediately hit it off. She shared so many wonderful nuggets with me. I tried to keep up to share the same with her. I don't know that I was successful, but it was in a completely different arena about a completely different thing. But her story, as I got to learn more about her and who she is, what she does, how she got started, I knew that she would be an excellent guest for us to have today. So I am going to share just a snippet, a small snippet of Elena's bio because it is massive. It is massive. So I'm just going to give you a little bit. So Elena Agar is a global talent development expert, speaker, and co-founder of Shiftwell.ai, a human-centered performance and well-being platform with over 15 years of experience spanning higher education, corporate learning, and entrepreneurship. Elena helps individuals and organizations unlock growth through practical neuroscience-backed strategies. She's passionate about building high-performing, soul-centered workplaces and preparing the next generation for the future of work. But let me also tell you, she is a powerhouse. Her interviews, with television and print are just amazing work she's done. Forbes, her podcast that she has herself, the awards, 40 under 40 in two areas. Tice Readership Awards 2022 with the most read article of 2022, which I love, called Why Women Make Better Leaders Than Men. I happen to agree with that, and we're going to dive into all of these things. She has a blog, she has a book, she has many published articles. She's just dynamic. I cannot say enough. So I'm just going to bring her on to the virtual stage. Welcome to Create Yourself. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. That was I'm just sitting here and I'm like, oh my gosh, like it was first the whole intro is about the way you introduce your show is phenomenal. It makes me rethink how I introduce my show, my podcast. So I'm feel inspired and I feel very similar to how you feel about meeting me, about how I met you and just the kind of energy you have and the things that we talked about. So I mean, really, it's really a pleasure and an honor to be here with you and to coming up on this conversation. So I'm really excited. Thank you so much for the kind intro, and let's dive into this.
All right, sounds good. No, thank you. And I intentionally, because I know about your podcast, and we'll talk a bit about that during our time together. And I did not want to butcher your last name, and I've been practicing. But if you don't mind, please
Absolutely.
introduce to our audience your full name and take us on your create yourself journey. Like, what made you decide that this was the path for you?
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, Elena Agar is kind of my shortened my podcast name, but my full name is Elena Agaragimova. It's a mouthful, so I decided to shorten it a little bit in some cases and say Elena Agar is fine. So, yeah, it's been a journey. Listen, I always say I kind of fell into the things that I was doing because I was always a curious individual, and I never wanted to stay in a career path that wasn't exciting to me. And I think sometimes we think that's kind of naive. You're like, well, do you have to have this exciting career? And I always deep down felt like I did. I said, well, why would I just work and like be unhappy and also not make very much money and so on. So that experience in my earlier career has really pushed me to continue to discover who I am, what I'm good at, what value do I bring, what do I enjoy, what drains me. And I think, through those different experiences, it just kind of, I came to be who I am today, which is really just a builder, a creator, and just somebody who really enjoys the conversations around talent, around performance, around career growth. So that's we can dive deeper into kind of specific parts of my life, but that's kind of the overarching theme.
Yeah, well, as I said at the beginning, I had an opportunity to not only read through your bio, but also, look at all the other things that you have done with writing and your books and just you're a TEDx speaker too, and that's on my to-do list, my living list. I don't like to say bucket list, I guess as much, so I always say living list.
Mm.
So the TEDx Dubai, and that's another area, just absolutely beautiful. Um, you embody, like truly embody what it means to create and move forward in the things that you are good at and tapping into the things that you're good at. So you definitely are imagery, innovation, intimacy, just all the pieces. I brought up TEDx specifically because you shared a very interesting story when you gave your TED Talk. So if you don't mind, would you share just a little bit about that and how it ties into the work that you're currently doing?
Yeah, so I think the story you're probably referring to is my numerous jobs that I've had before the age of
Yes.
25. So I've had about 17 different jobs before the age of 25. So my very first job, and I always give it a lot of credit, was actually at Subway. And I joke, I think, even in the talk, that is where I learned the value of customer service, the power of building relationships, the power of just remembering things about people, like their Subway order or what kind of cookie did they want. And I didn't recognize any of this, right? Until way later in life. And then I was like, oh, well, that makes sense why I'm so comfortable with meeting new people and I'm really personal in a lot of cases. And that's because the beginning of my career was one very early on, which I always feel is a blessing. And I always, when I speak at university campuses now, I tell students, I'm like, you need to just work. It doesn't matter. Put yourself in situations, even if it's fast food, even if it's whatever. All of it is experience. It is valid experience, and there's nothing wrong with that. So that was my that I really feel strongly about this because I truly believe that the reason I am this kind of person who is very resilient and who is able to change and create and adapt is because I worked from an earlier age and because I kept doing different things and getting myself out of my comfort zone, not on purpose at that time, but out of necessity, because I had to make money and I had to. My mom would always push me to, like, you need to have a job, right? Like, that was like her whole thing. She was very strong in that. And so, like, so all of that really, so that was kind of what I was talking about my TEDx, is that I've had all those jobs and I give a lot of credit to those jobs because those were the jobs that we don't often give credit to. And I think that's a miss on our part because we think like, oh, a job at Subway, a job at a retail store, a job as a waitress. These are really important jobs, number one, not only because of the service they provide, because of the experience that your customer gets if you're really good at this job, right? But also it teaches you humility. It teaches you social skills. It teaches you resilience. It teaches you how to deal with conflict because in service jobs, there's always conflict. And guess what? These are the skills that are most needed in the corporate world today. So before you get to your fancy job, that quote unquote considered fancy, those corporate jobs, right? Like, imagine if you could have all those skills that you can then take with you. And I feel like we're sitting on a lot of these opportunities because they don't seem to be as fancy, again, quote unquote, as some of those other jobs. And we tend to dismiss the service worker jobs. And I think that's a big mistake. And that was my biggest lesson in my very early career days in high school and so on. So that was kind of what I was talking about my in my TEDx. Yeah.
That is amazing. And that's why I wanted to bring that up because all of the nuggets that you just shared, and I'm going to encourage everyone to please go and find that TEDx talk. And so we'll have the link to share. I think it's important, all that you share about the multiple jobs, but what they all teach us. And as you were sharing, I started thinking about my first couple of jobs. And you are absolutely right, because the first two jobs that I had, one was 16 and it was working in a doctor's office at the front
Mhm.
desk. And the next job I got was the following summer. I started working at the Air Force Base in Arkansas, which is no longer there. But the experiences that I gained from both of those places helped me administratively with work that I started doing on my own, and in future jobs that I would have, as you say, the fancy jobs, and
Mm,
certainly working on the military base. It gave me my opportunity to do that again and learn about coding and medical records and things like very, very early on. So dating myself, that was back in the 90s, 80s, 90s,
mhm,
back in the 90s. And so thinking about that, that transitioned all the way to me having the opportunity to work in Europe with the military.
mm,
So being in K-Town or Kaiserslautern, working with the military, up to the around the time of the pandemic. And so I that ended up getting cut slightly short because of the pandemic, but I had to go all the way back to thinking about, yeah, how did my career in that space start? So you are absolutely right. You never despise the small beginnings. So I appreciate you sharing that. And as it relates then to your current jobs and things that you're involved with now, if you would just tell our listening audience a bit about the work that you're currently doing and some of the most gratifying parts about what you do.
mm. Yeah, no, thank you for that. And I want to just add to what you were saying is that some of those early jobs that you've had, were then those skills were useful to you later on in your career, right? Like in your kind of later on in life. And I think
Yes.
one thing that we really want us to be mindful of, because we feel like there's this straightforward path to careers, to skills, and there really isn't. It's really part of it is your mindset around around how you can utilize the skills that you have. So it's your ability to create opportunities around you based on what you know, who you know, what skills you have, and so on. And I think this is where we get stuck and part of it, I think, is because our school system and then university system gives us a very clear step-by-step process around, hey, if you get a good grade, you're going to graduate high school. If you graduate high school and you have good SAT scores, you're going to go into a good university, and then you have to pass tests and submit assignments and work as a team, and then you're going to graduate, get a degree, and then you're going to go into the workforce. But guess what? When you get into the workforce, you're not going to be able to, there's no structured pathway for you. And this is coming, this has come from somebody who's done recruitment, who's done talent development, who's built career paths. And I can tell you that once you get into university, you have to become a creator. You're no longer a consumer of information, and you're no longer a follower of directions. You're now a person who's responsible for creating things, for building things, for creating strategies, executing those strategies. And you're the one who has to come up with it, and you're the one who has to deal with the setbacks and so on. And if you're lucky, you will have a manager who will help you, who will mentor you, who will coach you. But in many cases, that is not the case. And so that brings me to what I do today. This is exactly kind of what I do. Well, I wear a couple of different hats. So one of the hats is I really just work with the organizations and their internal managers and teams to say, like, how do we operate better as a team on an individual basis? How do we drive performance in organizations in a way that is sustainable, in a way that people are not burnt out? Right. So like looking at the whole system approach versus just putting band-aids on broken legs by throwing, a training here or there, or just tackling issues that are not actually issues or cannot be solved with training, and really just understanding what is it at the core of what drives performance in organizations, right? And it relates to a lot of the work that you do, for example, around the wellness and energy management, right? And like we're bringing you on, for example, to do a session for our team, because I think ultimately over the years, what I've learned is that there's so much more to us than human beings than just the work that we do, and there's other factors that we create that create us and create the, how do I say, like performance and the potential that we have. And so that other hat that I wear is the builder and creator. And with two of my co-founders, we're building Shiftwell, which is really a tool that addresses these different things and looks at the whole system solution for performance and engagement in organizations versus these siloed areas that we know historically have not worked, and it's the definition of insanity, right? Is keep doing the same thing over and over again, and it produces no results. So we're kind of flipping the script on that and saying, here's the tools and actual, things that do work. So that's my world. Is I'm really passionate about talent development. I'm really convinced that we're not living up to our potential as human beings. Forget it in the organization, just in general. And a part of it is because the systems we have in place, the environment that's around us, and the societal things that we have in place don't allow for that. And we're not, we're not, how to say this, like we're not, it's not structured for a human being to thrive in a way that makes sense for them. It's structured for companies to benefit. And I think that there's a nice combination that is the solution where we can thrive, make money for the company and ourselves, and protect our well-being and authenticity as a human being.
And that is beautiful. The fact, though, that I have a few other questions I wanted to get to, it's like we could stop right there. And I mean, this is why I was so excited about having you on as a guest, because you truly do talk about these things that inspired why I created this podcast in the first place, because I wanted to talk about what it means to be innovative and to kind of disrupt systems. I've had guests on that will talk about, things around social justice and what does it mean to disrupt systems in that way. What we're talking about here today, what does it mean to actually focus on the whole person? And there is a way that we can make money for the companies that we work for and work with, and still be able to tap in to who we are as human beings and be fed and led in that way. So I love the fact that you said, I wrote it down, it was band-aids on broken legs, just impossible to do. And
Yeah.
so I love that you have this passion, this energy, this desire to help others to grow as individuals, because when you operate better as an individual, then you can operate better as a leader and on teams, and going in and being, what does it mean to be sustainable, and not just, as you said, putting the band-aids on the broken legs, but actually working to fix systems and make it to where we can actually function as a whole. So I am excited about being able to join you all here very shortly, to share my knowledge on these areas, and then just having you to be here with us today. Like, I am so excited. As I said, you have given mic drop after mic drop after mic drop moments. But I've got a couple of other questions that I need to ask. So
Yeah.
with that being said, I hear that you've shared things that you enjoy and gratifying about all that you do, all that you have taken in, just all your experiences and how you have married those to find things that bring you joy. What may be the most disheartening thing that you have found in the work that you do? And I think you've kind of already touched on that a little bit already, but is there any one specific thing that, you know what, man, I really wish people would tap into or pay attention to more or be more open to?
Oh, that's such a great question. How much time do we have? It's such a good question, and it comes from personal experience, which I then, you know how it is, like, when you experience something personally, and then you start to recognize the same patterns in other people, and you're like, wait a minute, that looks familiar. Oh, I was there. I know what that feels like. I know what that is. So some of those things are, I think, a big part of, it's more on a personal note, but I think a big part of the things that dishearten me is the lack of awareness we have as human beings around what actually drives us and values that we have. What do we stand for? I think that, again, this comes from personal experience, because in my 20s, it took me a long time to really identify what are my values, and understanding, spending time around self-awareness about what is exciting to me as an individual and what is not. I spent a lot of time comparing myself to other people and comparing myself to success stories of other people, and quickly feeling like I wasn't enough. And I was, frankly speaking, I felt like a loser for half of my life. And so And that's because I didn't have that self-awareness. I didn't spend enough time diving deep into who am I? What is it that I bring to, what is it that makes me, what is that makes me wake up in the morning? Like, what is the exciting pieces? And I think that we don't spend a lot of time there because we're distracted, or we just don't know because we don't know what we don't know. And so it's through some ups and downs in life, I've recognized that I'm the common thread for things that happen to go wrong in my life. And so that forced me to start diving a little bit deeper about who I am and what do I value, right? What do I stand for? What are my principles? What are my non-negotiables in life and in my career and so on? So I think that's a big part of it because I see, and this translates into organizations because organizations are human beings, they're people. That's what makes an organization is people, right? And then you see this in managers and the kind of different management styles that we have is a result of how much self-awareness do they have and not have. So anyway, so I think there's a big piece about self-awareness that we all could use more of. And because it's a continuous journey, it's not like one day you just wake up and you're like, I want to be self-aware and let me do all these exercises. It's a continuous journey, right? Like you have to start somewhere by again understanding values and drivers and things that drain your energy and the people that are around you. But then as you reach different levels in your life, you start to recognize that sometimes, your values are challenged, and how do you stand up for that? And then it requires a different kind of self-awareness. And then it's like, especially when you build a business, and business is not the most, how to say this, like it can be a very toxic, a very shady kind of space, right? So it's like, what are your boundaries when it comes to business, right? What do you want to stand for? And so I think, each level requires a different level of that self-awareness. So that's like the biggest thing I think I see disheartening because it's the thing that's the most accessible to us. It's free, it's available and accessible to everybody, yet we don't spend enough time on this in this area. So I'd probably say that, and I'll pause here.
Yes, I totally, totally agree. Um, as you were sharing, I thought of my grandmother who shared with us as we were growing up. She would say that, the biggest rooms in our personal homes is that of improvement.
Mm,
And I think about that off and on all the time. And so when you shared that um, about self-awareness, and I thought, yeah, of all the things that we can work on, we should always be, I guess, inspired, encouraged. We should want to continue to grow, to improve, to be self-aware, to be accountable. And, sometimes looking in that mirror is a difficult thing to do, but I think it's a necessary one. It's necessary for us as individuals so that we can show up how we best need to for ourselves. And then that goes over into our places of responsibility. So I
mm,
love that you talked about what it means to be self-aware, what it means to have values and boundaries. Oh, and I have a really good friend who was a guest a few months back, and she talks a lot about self-care and boundaries. She actually has a t-shirt that says boundaries are my superpower. So so
mm,
yeah, so I don't totally agree. We have to have principles and we have to have some non-negotiables as well. But that
mm.
all comes from being intentional about our self-awareness. So I want to switch gears because that's a good space for us to land on the podcast that you host. So tell us about your podcast, the motivation behind it, and just type of guests, just any and everything you'd want us to know about your shift with Elena.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, so the podcast is Shift with Elena Agar. It's really just a space for me to invite people like yourself. You've been on it, of course, like to bring people together and let's talk about performance and talent and what does it mean to, to just be at our top best essentially. So I bring in talent development professionals, coaches, entrepreneurs in this space, and we just talk about these topics. And I think a big focus for me is like sharing career stories of people who are coming from very different backgrounds and internationally different kind of educational backgrounds, career stories, and so on. And my favorite part about that is that the more you hear people's story, the more you realize how much of it is what we make of it and how we use the opportunities that come to us, or how aware we are of what drives us, what's interesting. So it's like almost this whole notion is also like being in the right place in the right time, recognizing opportunities when they come your way. And then a big part of some of those discoveries is that in order for us to be at our top best, we have to continuously evolve, to continuously get out of our comfort zones. And that was my whole push, because I've learned so much through my own experiences. And I was like, well, I would love to see how other people are doing it. So I started interviewing people, and then it just kind of evolved into just being the space where, selfishly, I learned so much from my guests, and it's 5 years and counting. I have close to 300 episodes now. And it's like, these, almost, 300 people that I've spoken to that share their career story, and you hear it and you realize how similar we all are. You realize how available and accessible certain things are to us as human beings, no matter where we come from. And I think it's reassuring that we have a lot more control and a lot more power into our own career development and lives than we ever imagined. And that every story you hear is a story of resilience, is a story of overcoming comfort zone, is a story of, just keep going. And I think stories are powerful. And finally, honestly, it made me a better listener, and also it made me more empathetic than ever before. So because when you hear other people and their stories, you have your biases and your prejudices about different backgrounds or career backgrounds and titles. And when you start talking to people just on a human level, you just start to recognize how we're all just the same thing at the end of the day. And there's a lot of learnings for me there. And I thought I was empathetic, but it made me even more empathetic. And now I look at people as like everybody has a story, and not to judge people based on the cover and so on. So yeah, so that's the podcast. It's available everywhere if people want to listen to it. Topics vary, so people can just see what kind of speaks to them and check it out.
And it's a great podcast, and I'm glad to be connected to it, not just as a guest, but now learning about you and the podcast, being able to go back and listen to, like you said, there are various topics. So there is truly a myriad of topics for everyone. I think everyone who is listening to our podcast today, I'm encouraging you to go and check it out, because there is truly something for everyone there. I think one of the other things that you mentioned that I certainly appreciate is what you said about learning from your guests, because I have learned so much from my guests on the show. And congratulations and kudos to you for having nearly 300 podcast interviews. I'm still very much a young one in this game. But I'm getting there, and I love the opportunity to connect with people such as yourself. So many things that we get to learn about other people, and in turn, it helps us to learn more about ourselves too. So great with communicating and just pushing me personally very transparently. So, this kind of pushes me out of my comfort zone a bit, because I actually did a podcast several years ago with not my nonprofit at the time. And that was the whole point of it, was to give people an opportunity to be able to share about who they are, what they do, and give them a platform where they may not always have one. And so doing this in this way, and it being a little bit more personal, some business, some personal experiences and lived experiences, it's pushing me out of my comfort zone. But at the same time, it has been such a wonderful experience. So I thank you for making time and space for us. And as we close out our session here, I do want to lift up one other thing, and that is about your book, because I know that you have one, and I'm a Kindle person, so I'm already downloading it to read. But if you would share with our audience about the book and any other activities, events, anything that you have going on.
Sure, thank you so much. So I think the one you're referring to is The Rough Guide to Awesome Leadership, which is a book me and my business partner wrote a few years ago, actually, but it's still very relevant today. And it's really just like a no BS approach to management. So it's like, what are some things you need to know as a manager, and what are some behaviors you can, do today, practical steps you can take to be better for yourself and for your people. So it kind of breaks it into two pieces. One, it's like about you going back to that self-awareness, because I feel like management, people management, leadership, it's really about the self-awareness. You have to be a self-aware leader in order for you to be a great leader. And then the second part is like, how do you empower teams to be the same? How do you empower teams to be better, to grow? Ultimately, leadership is about helping other people grow. That's what leadership is. It's to enable other people to get to where they want to go, and you're there as a support, right? Because that's the job. And so it provides really just like really tips and strategies and quick behaviors you can do in order for you to be that person. So yeah, and I hang out mostly on LinkedIn. So if people look me up on LinkedIn, I post a lot of content there. You can find my podcast there. Everything you can know about me is on LinkedIn. So it's where I post a lot of content, and feel free to reach out and have a chat and just say hello.
And with that, good people, we are going to wrap up our podcast for today. Those of you who have been following me for a while, if you clicked on this link at all, then you will see all of her information, her bio, which is fantastic, how you can connect with her. So it's always there, but I always like to give my guests an opportunity to share in their own voice about where's the best place to connect. So I can tell you all personally, professionally, she is very active on LinkedIn. She's very personable. So if you want to connect, you have no reason to feel shy. Just click on the link and follow her and connect with her. And she's a wealth of knowledge. She's a beautiful, spirited person, beautiful on the outside as well as the inside. And that is the best part. People can be aesthetically attractive, but when they have a beautiful spirit too, it just further exudes the outer aesthetic. So thank you so much for being who you are and for joining us today as a guest.
Thank you. You're so very kind. Thank you very much.
And to all of my listeners, thank you so much for tuning in today. And until next time, go forward and create the life you desire and deserve. And remember, you can do so at any age. Let's continue to transition, transform, and thrive together.